Right, welcome to John Doyle's View, and yes, it's been a bit of a time since we've done the last one, and I thought I was going to do one before. I can't remember. That might be the next one, but recently, obviously, the incidents in Israel and Palestine have interested me. It's one of those things where, because I think both sides have committed immoral things and bad things, for a better choice of words that I can't think of at the moment, which is why you often get such extreme views from both sides. Obviously, I'm a Muslim, so but nevertheless, you know, I can see. Yeah, it was interesting hearing different views. I've been listening to LBC and TalkSport and BBC News. It's interesting to see different people's views, and it makes you think. I mean, it isn't a clear cut. You can't say it's just one side. That both sides have done things bad. Both, you know, are other different things. And this is what's interesting about the media, is you can turn on to different channels and they will tell you conflicting truths. And that is really interesting, because then it makes you think, well, which is the truth then? And if the truth is so finite, why is it different channels who claim, you know, all these news channels claim to be telling the truth, and all these politicians who are speaking on the claim to be telling the truth, but they all seem to give different versions of it? And that's really interesting, because I've heard, you know, before, I know that Israel claimed, or the Israelis claimed, that Palestine, or Hamas I should say, broke the truce. But then you know, by firing rockets, which I believe is true. But I also heard that Israel had broken the truce several times before, but Hamas hadn't responded to it. You know, with in the sense of the blockades and etc. and stuff like that. So it's very difficult to know, because unfortunately with the media, they give you their views, and often they will pick out people and get them to speak the truth on their behalf, and they won't actually give finite detail, like what the actual truce was. And, you know, obviously you could check who broke the truce, or truce, I can't even say the bloody word now, who broke it and who didn't, who was first, because, you know, obviously everyone knows if Israel broke them or not, but they never sort of show you, oh, this is what the document says, and on day 58, on day 58, on the big 58, you know, whoever did what, and then day 59, whoever did what, and then you could actually see, and they could show you by picture what had actually happened. But they never do that. They will never give you the concrete, complete picture, even on these shows where they sort of just, like, not like just on the news, but on a special like panorama type thing, where they have a documentary about it. They still won't give you the finite detail so that you can make an informed decision. They will get you people instead, and they will always get you biased people. So they get you, you know, someone who represents the Israeli government and ask them, who broke the ceasefire? Well, obviously they're going to say Hamas, and then there are someone from Hamas or someone who's sympathetic to them who broke the treaty, and they'll say them. So, you know, that's not a way of getting the truth. Yeah, that's a way of getting biased truth. That, you know, whereas these media companies could give you the finite truth by actually giving you the actual detail. It's very boring and it's not entertaining news, but it is old-fashioned news. It is finite news in that sense, and then you can actually see who actually broke the ceasefire, and then they can show those people's views, and then you'll understand how humans lie out of their teeth. So it's difficult. And also it was interesting to hear, obviously at first, you know, you think of it, you see lots of Palestinians dying, a lot of innocents dying, but then obviously then Israel were putting across their point of view, which is a valid point of view in the sense that, you know, a terrorist group, Hamas, who are unfortunately in power, been voted in democratically in part of the country that might one day become Palestine, and they've been firing rockets. So obviously, if someone's firing rockets into your land, killing your people indiscriminately, because at least, you know, you could argue that Israel are trying to target non-civilians, although I'll come to that in a minute. Whereas Palestine is just launching rockets and it's killing, you know, there's no attempt because they can't. They're just blowing up whoever they can. So obviously, that's intolerant to put up that kind of pressure. But obviously then if you go back further enough, like I heard on one radio station, the whole of this problem starts with 16 years ago. I know there's a lot before this, whereas the land was, they're refugees, and it's their land, and Israel haven't given it back fully yet, and the bit, the West Bank or whatever, and connected it all up, and given the bit that they haven't, that they've got their settlements in. They haven't given that back against international law, and this is what I really have a problem with, international law. You have international law, and you think that if you have that, if someone breaks it, that's it, you're in. Like if someone breaks a crime here, they're arrested. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Israel, I mean, it has been documented a lot that Israel have broken a lot of international laws, but then we know so have America and Britain in the recent Iraq-Afghanistan wars, and nothing gets done about it. Whereas, say, if someone else breaks it, that's it. They're on trial, and that I have a real problem with, because that's, that comes on to the part of why Hamas are doing in their place. You've got the argument Israel are bombing, are attacking now Hamas to get rid of them because they've been bombing Israel indiscriminately. Whereas also you have the argument, well, what caused Hamas to do this in the first place? Well, obviously, if for years they've been talking about giving them back their land, part of their land. I know Hamas don't want to believe in Israel, and that is a problem. I understand that. Because from my point of view, both countries should be able to live together, as one as Palestine, one as Israel. But if you've got a bit of land that's supposed to have been given and has been agreed upon and is against international law, and remember, what's interesting that I heard on the BBC News is the idea of Israel and their breaking international law yet again with the fact that they bombed some police cadets, which by international law are not combatants, and thus they're breaking international law by doing that. And also the whole idea of is very backward in the sense that I know it's not quite a great simile of the Irish and English battles when Ireland used to come over and as the IRA, they were terrorists, same as Hamas. They did give warning, that is true, there is a difference in that. Fundamentally, it's the same, but there are differences. The IRA weren't out to get rid of England. Yes, I know that there's difference, but the idea of terrorism and how you deal with terrorism, that is the issue. And that is the issue I think that has to be looked upon. In the past, when countries didn't get on with each other, they bombed each other, and they didn't worry about it because we weren't all conjoined. Now we're in a much smaller world where every country is integrated, and we're talking about integration, and that is the way forward and the way that things will go. So you can't do those types of things. You can look at Iraq and Afghanistan and the impact that has had, especially with the media involvement. The idea of war has changed, probably since the Vietnam War, actually. But Iraq and Afghanistan have sealed that idea that you can't just go in there and blow people up and expect the public just to say, yeah, that's great. We're not like that anymore. We've become more civilised. That word is tenuously used. But what was I going to say? About the IRA. The English government knew that they couldn't. They knew that they couldn't fly over to IRA, and because they knew the terrorists lived in Ireland, they couldn't go flying over to Ireland and drop bombs on sites, like churches or whatever, Catholic churches or whichever it is they belong to or were part of, although not directed from. I'm not saying the Catholic Church were terrorists. But whatever buildings, they didn't go there and do that. Why did Britain not go and do that? Because it's on their backyard, and because they know that if you go and do that, it's like a fire. If you've got a fire, you don't pull it out with throwing petrol over it, do you? You dampen it down until the flames are gone. And that's a bit like what Israel are doing. It's an old-fashioned style of going in there and blowing things up. And what are you going to do? Even, the moderates there are going to, they're not, if they see their children who might been walking past where a apparent Hamas, or even if it was a Hamas target there, and a child gets their leg blown off, the mother and brothers and fathers might be complete moderates, but when they see that, it's going to do something to them. That's human nature, and that's why doing this kind of action is just not sensible or wise or, dare I say it, religious. And that is the big problem. You've got Israel and you've got Palestine, you've got Jews and you've got Muslims. They should be thinking, you know, and this is why non-religious people use these types of things as showing a reason why you shouldn't follow God and you shouldn't follow religion. They should be thinking, just a minute, we are representing our religions and we need to make sure that that we're actually following them, you know. And that is a big problem because these things don't come across as religious.